Never in my life did I think I would be standing on the stage performing to thousands of people, worshiping truly, and with a big artist who I'd listened to for most of my life. I never thought that was possible, a possibility for me. And now, for the Harvest Crusade, I'll be going back.
To the same place.
To the same place, to the Honda Center, to perform with Phil Wickham.
Well, hello, everyone, and we are here for episode number 79 of the Audacious Faith podcast. We're actually on location today at Faith Fellowship, which is a great church, and is located in La Palma, California. So if you're near here, what time of service is for that?
10:30.
10:30 every Sunday morning. You're definitely going to want to come in here and feel part of the family. But I have a special guest with me today, someone I've actually known since she was a kid. And she's not a kid anymore, doing some great things. And I'm looking forward to kind of hearing about her life and having her share with you today. And so that is Joy Galvan. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So we're excited. Let's get right into it and kind of tell everybody a little bit about you, maybe a little bit of your background, how you came to faith, all of that important stuff.
So how I kind of came to faith. I've been raised in a Christian home all my life. My dad's a pastor. So it was all I knew. And when I was around the age of 8, I gave my life to Christ, fully, and what I believed. And I knew that was what I believed, and it wasn't just my parents anymore. I was at summer camp, and I remember after one of the sermons, they had an altar call, if you want to give your life to Jesus. And so I raised my hand and I prayed with my camp counselor. And that's when I gave my life to Christ. When I was around 14 or 15, however, I kind of just was feeling like, again, my faith was not fully my own. I feel like it was more of a childlike, very kid. I didn't fully understand. Mm-hmm. And so when I was around 14 or 15, when I really understand the gospel and what Jesus did for us, I rededicated my life and have been living by the Bible for Jesus ever since.
Awesome. Now, what you're sharing is actually pretty common, especially for those who kind of grow up from the nursery on, in there. And then you grew up, obviously, you already mentioned your dad being a pastor. So there's this stigma or something when it comes to PKs. They're famous for lots of things, usually not always good things. It is challenging. I mean, having been a pastor myself and seeing that in my own family, I know it's difficult. Maybe kind of, what were the advantages of that? And just be honest with us. What were some of the things that were difficult or disadvantages?
The advantages, there were a lot of advantages. Everyone in the church knew who I was. I got to go to all the pastors' things every time my dad was invited somewhere. Just recently, the Southern Baptist Convention, we all got to go to New Orleans, which was an amazing experience. So those are kind of some of the advantages. And, the disadvantages, they are there. Having everybody know you, you're expected to act a certain way.
Right.
Act perfectly, even though we all know you can't be perfect. There is that expectation to kind of sit back and don't make waves, don't speak out, don't have your own opinions, just kind of nod and smile and, don't have a bad day.
Sure.
So it's hard to live up to that. It's not, that expectation shouldn't be put on PKs, but it is. And then obviously the stigma of PKs going crazy because of, a forced kind of faith. That was not my experience, but I definitely have seen other friends who are PKs as well have that experience because they just did not have they didn't feel it. So, and they felt like it was forced upon them.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you bring this up. And I mean, I do know your parents, and I know they're not those type of people that do that. It's more of a, not just, you're going to do this because this is what's expected.
Mm-hmm.
But that does happen with some people. And I remember when I first went to church years ago, and I mean, these pastors' kids were like, dressed up in all these funny clothes, and just was like, I felt bad for him, quite honestly. But you were talking about that a little bit, even in your introductory thing about faith, on how you believed, you prayed a prayer, but then later on you realized more of the gospel, and so were there times where, maybe even now, where you're looking at some beliefs or some things about your faith where it has to become not just what you were told, what you were taught, but where it becomes your own convictions, and you start making the decisions more based on the fact that this is the way I want and choose to live, rather than this is just what's expected of me? Have you had any of that type of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's honestly mostly when it came to reading the Bible. When I was a kid, it was just always taught to me, you read the Bible, that's how God speaks to you. And I didn't get it. I didn't understand. And then when I was older, I was kind of like, why am I not hearing from God? Like, why am I praying and I'm not hearing anything? And it was because I was not interacting with him through his word, like, which is where he speaks mostly to us. Yeah. So that was definitely my own conviction that I needed to have and choose to read the Bible. Like, nobody could tell me to do it. Like, nobody, like, I couldn't have a buddy that was like, okay, Joy, read your Bible. Yeah. No, I needed to choose that every day to read the Bible, read his word, and just like experience worship through the word.
Sure. Now, did that change at that point? Because when we're like, for instance, there's those plans, read this or read the Bible through a year or whatever it is. And sometimes people are doing it just to do it, and to say they did is almost like their duty. You mentioned that early on you're reading, but you're not really getting anything. Yeah. So is there a point where kind of, I don't know if it was a difference when you wanted to do it, or then was there a point where you didn't understand things looking at the Bible, but then all of a sudden the Spirit kind of kicked in and started giving you more of that understanding?
Absolutely. There would be times when I wanted to read the Bible and I had no idea where to read. Okay. And the things I was going through in life at that point were just a lot, and I wanted to like experience God and just know what he had to say to me, but I had no idea where to go. Yeah. And so I would just pray right before I read the Bible that God would show me the verse what he wanted to say to me, the verse I needed to read at that moment. And I would maybe flip through some pages and read, I don't know, whatever verse came up. And nice. There it was, exactly what the encouragement and exactly what God needed to say to me at the point.
It's amazing how he can do that, right? So you kind of use that, what they call the fan method, the page is blue and then you put your finger down. And now people do it often. They'll look on those Bible apps and it's like, what's the verse of the day? The verse
of the day.
Yeah. Absolutely. And often it's great, right? So when do you think, was it around the time that you said around 14 or whatever, when you started understanding it more, or was it even later?
I think it was even later. Okay. I knew the kind of relationship I wanted to have with Christ at 14 and started working towards that. But it was later into high school, probably like 16, 17, around when I graduated high school, that I actually started understanding what he was saying in the Bible, and just because a lot of it was confusing and I really had no idea, and wanting to figure it out on my own, I like had to search and dive and just kind of like investigate and figure out what he was trying to say through these passages. That's why I like reading multiple times through the passage. Yeah, it helps a lot.
That's awesome. You're bringing memories to me, even because I remember doing it with my oldest son, and we decided at one point, I don't know if you ever did this, but when he was maybe 11 or something, it's like, okay, I'm going to start doing, he kind of wanted to do it, so I'll start doing a devotional thing with you, and we'll explain it. And as a dad, I was thinking, he doesn't get any of this. It was just kind of like, how does he not see any of this? Because I would see it, and eventually it kicked in, but it took a while. Yeah. Did you ever have those kind of experiences, or it was always on your own?
I feel like it was mostly on my own. I was a little challenging as a kid, where I just needed to get things on my own. Right. So anybody telling me multiple times, you could tell me over and over, but until I clicked for me, I couldn't do it. Right. Yeah.
Well, let's go into that background. You mentioned, growing up. Now, I know you went to a Christian school before the college.
Mm-hmm.
Was it all the way through, or there's a certain point where you started there?
I went to Christian school all my life.
All your life, okay.
It was elementary school. I was at one school. It was a Christian school. High school, I was again at a Christian school, and then college, I ended up going to a Christian school as well.
Right. Okay. So that's a different experience. Although, I'm sure you would agree, Christian school doesn't mean Christian.
Nope, absolutely.
And for a lot of the students, it does not equate to that. What were some of the things you liked about that? I'm sure you're thankful for having that opportunity. Did you ever feel like you were missing out at some point, and how do you feel now?
I did at, what was it, junior year? I think junior year, going to junior, I asked my parents to send me to public school because I felt like I was missing something. Like I felt like, I don't know, to be cool or whatever,
Sure.
or to have that experience of the real world, using quotation marks,
Yeah.
that I needed to be at a public school. And of course they advised against that. And
Yeah.
I eventually took their advice and stayed at the school. And I'm so glad I did, because I really did get a Christian education. All my teachers were Christians. They believed what they were teaching, and they integrated faith into the curriculum as well.
Okay. So if they hadn't done that, how do you think that would have been different?
At a Christian school?
Well, for example, you said your teachers actually seemed to believe what they were telling you.
Yes.
And they integrated it into their life. It's not always the case. So if it hadn't been the case, do you think maybe that was the most convincing part about it, that they actually seemed to believe it and model it?
I think so, absolutely. Yeah, I think you can tell when somebody doesn't believe what they're saying.
Right.
And me, I very much rely on what I can gain from another person, what I can see. And you could tell. It's very, very easy to see if someone believes what they're saying or if they just don't care at all.
Right.
And so I feel like if they were saying things that they didn't care about, they wouldn't have as much energy, as much passion about it, and I wouldn't have been able to gain anything.
Right. And those different people, I'm sure, is important. Even though you know, your dad's a pastor, your mom, they're both consistent on that. But, kids always are going to get a certain parent deafness after a while. Maybe this is just the way our family is. Maybe this is what they're saying, but what about everyone else? So to see that you weren't like the only weirdos out there, right? that some other people actually had some convictions and faith, I'm sure. Did you find that some of those mentors maybe at one point you needed them more, you needed those different voices to really hold you in there?
I feel like, yes. I feel like even some of those voices came from my friends alongside professors and teachers.
Okay.
I just needed peers to, not to kind of prove to me that I was right, but to kind of build me up in that faith as well.
Okay. So friends, like they say, choose your friends wisely.
Absolutely.
Because it easily could have taken you the other way.
Oh, absolutely. I truly think if I ended up at public school, I would not be where I am today.
I'm pretty sure you're right when it comes to that. And especially having gone through, I've seen it where we have kids in a Christian school and all of a sudden the parents have a brilliant idea that the kid wants to go and they're just going to let them do it. And it's like, it's not going to, a lot of times it does not end well.
Yeah.
Hopefully they come back after a period of time. But then, okay, so you graduate from there. And you were very involved there, especially, I would follow you on social media. So I saw things, especially your last couple of years that you're mentioning, where you did a lot of things. But then you have the choice. Okay, now you've been in Christian school all your life. It's time to go to college. You could have gone in numerous places. So what made you ended up at Cal Baptist University in Riverside, good school. What made you, that was your choice, obviously. So what made you decide that? And was there a point where you almost didn't?
Yes.
Okay.
I applied to 6 schools.
Okay.
With all different majors because I had truly no idea what I wanted to do with my life or where God was calling me. And so I kind of put it all out there. And I was praying, Lord, show me where you want me to be. And it was, honestly, I wanted to go to Grand Canyon University, which is another Christian university. But I realized I could not be that far away from my family, from my parents.
Okay.
So that was quickly thrown out of the mix. And then it was between Cal State Long Beach and CBU. And I got into every school except for Cal State Long Beach.
Wow.
So God made it very clear where I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And my major was sociology. That's where I applied, and I stuck with it the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
The major is sociology and a minor in worship arts and ministry. And God just led me through the entire way.
Awesome. So basically, he gave you choices, then you narrowed the choices.
Yep.
And then he made it very clear by shutting one door.
Mm-hmm.
I love how that happens. And I also love what you said, because this is not always the case. I mean, I've coached students. I've had a lot of students that I've worked with through the years. And what I often hear is, I want to get as far away from home as possible. And they often change their mind once they're gone.
Absolutely.
But that's their initial thought. So I guess maybe kind of explain, I love what you said. Why was family and close proximity important to you?
I love my family. I feel like I learned so much from them.
Sure.
Especially with my dad being a pastor, and my mom is in the field of social work, which I'm going into as well. And so they're so extremely wise. And I feel like if I was that far away from them, I would just be unhappy. I love having them close.
Mm-hmm.
Even being in Riverside was a little too far sometimes.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, you're at least able to travel back and forth a lot. By the way, her dad, Pastor Abel Galvan, is episode number 6. If you want to go back in our episode list and see that. And actually, I got to get Mom one of these times.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know Mom has a lot to say as well.
Yes, she
so we'll definitely be looking to set that up. So you go out there to CBU, and everything I've heard about the school is good, but maybe give a little pitch right here. Why would someone want to definitely consider going there?
I truly believe it's a great school. I mean, the curriculum is great. I learned a lot. Everything in my specific major just clicked for me.
Yeah.
Like, I know that was where I was supposed to be. And the professors, they're just amazing. Like, truly godly people. I did not have one bad experience with a professor.
That's great.
And they care about you.
Okay.
Like, when I was sick, I ended up in the ER one time, college life. I was very sick. Mm-hmm. And I emailed my professor, and they were like, please take your time. Please get ready. They excused my absences. Mm-hmm. They gave me makeup time to finish assignments. That just doesn't happen like anywhere else.
Yeah.
It's get it done or you're going to fail.
Yeah.
At CBU, there's they actually truly care about you. They care about your growth. They want you to pass. Mm-hmm. They don't want to fail anybody, at least in my experience. Okay. So I just love the school and the community, and the campus is beautiful. I don't know if you've seen it.
I've been there once, mm-hmm. but didn't get to explore the whole thing, and this was several years ago. Mm-hmm. And then, especially seeing you out there and some other people out there, it's intrigued me even more as a good school that it is. And I've heard a lot of great things. You just touched on the caring aspect. I don't mean to use a cliche phrase here, but this has been used for years. People don't really care about what you know until they know how much you care. So, is that really what you felt there? Is that caring part, which really got the credibility? Okay. And so your major, you said, was sociology,
yes.
Right? And with worship being the minor. Okay, and I love worship, so that was the part that grabbed my attention. But sociology, how did the Lord put that in your heart? Is it through what you've seen your mom do, or is that just part of it? Or?
I think that absolutely is part of it. I grew up around her work, so I would sit at the front desk and answer calls when I was like 8 years old.
Nice.
And so I was around that environment all the time. And when it was time to choose, of course, I couldn't choose a major, but I knew sociology was a broad enough major where wherever I wanted to go, like the door would be open wherever I wanted to go in that field.
Okay.
And I knew that was the field I wanted to because I've always like had a heart to help. I just didn't know where. Like I used to think it was in a hospital as a nurse. God steered me away from that. But when he ended up showing me towards sociology, I knew that social work, that field was what I wanted to progress with.
Okay. So I'm sensing the parent connection here in the sense that this is what your mom does. Your dad also is very, there's all types of different pastors, but your dad's one of those like personal type with people, invest in people type of individuals. So they kind of do similar things, but from a different angle. Mm-hmm. What kind of, in sociology, who specifically do you think you're looking towards working with the most?
So as I mentioned earlier, I thought I wanted to be a nurse. Okay. I knew that wasn't right, but when I found out hospital social work was an option, I found I really have been called towards that area, which is why I'm currently working in a hospital now.
Awesome. So in a hospital setting like that, I'm not as familiar with that. So how does that play out? Like with families or whatever, what do you do? Or what will you look to do?
People who come into the hospital who need to see a social worker are usually going through the roughest time of their life.
Sure.
Whether it's losing a family member,
right,
their child's in the hospital, or they just need somebody like to help read them through paperwork. It's mostly kind of that stuff. It's just kind of like checking to see if they understand what they're signing, what they need to do to get one procedure or this and that. And it's just kind of meeting them where they're at and just being empathetic and realizing they're in a terrible situation, just being in the hospital. And so just helping ease the process for them through that.
Sure. I can't even begin to comprehend how important that really is. I try to stay out of hospitals as much as possible because it's such a overwhelming situation for people. Mm-hmm. When you all of a sudden you're not feeling well. And I think what's even worse, a lot of what you're talking about is you're dealing sometimes directly with the patient, but often you're dealing with the people that love the patient that want to help them but can't.
Yes.
And they're just overwhelmed. And then you're right, and paperwork and how are you going to pay for this and how's this going to happen? And it's just like the last thing they want to deal with at that point. Yeah. So definitely a field there to be able to show God's compassion to people and love and all of that. So let's get to the worship part of it now. So you took a minor. I can't even remember what my minor was, quite honestly. That's how minor it was for me. But your minor was pretty major for you.
Absolutely.
Something you like doing. You did it at the school. You also do it in church. So worship. So how's your passion for that? How long have you had that passion for that?
Well, I've been singing all my life. Ever since I was a child, my parents can tell you stories of when I sang karaoke and knew the whole song by memory when I was 5 years old.
Great.
Singing has always been a huge part of my life. But really, the call on my heart for worship was going into college. Okay. I was worshiping all through high school, in the worship team and the band. But when I was going into college in a major of sociology that had nothing to do with music, I really prayed and I was asking God, is this something you want me to continue?
Sure.
I love it. I have a huge passion for music, just singing, playing piano, all of that. Mm-hmm. But is this something you want me to continue? And the worship arts and ministry minor just appeared.
Right.
A man had came who was the director of the program to my high school and spoke about the major, but not the minor. Mm-hmm. And so when I did some research and found the minor, I knew that was what I wanted to get into so I wouldn't lose music.
Right.
So I joined choir in college. I did that for all 4 years. And I took all my music classes and just really learned how to be a worship leader.
So you're mentioning you didn't want to lose music. Mm-hmm. And we've seen a recurring theme through a lot of the episodes that we've been able to do, where God takes different parts of their life. And even though we do different things, he doesn't waste anything. He kind of uses everything in a way. And you've definitely seen that. Were you thinking to yourself, wow, I love music. I always have. I've sung. There's got to be some place for that in my life?
Yeah, definitely. I didn't even think it was the minor at first. I just knew I couldn't stop singing.
Sure.
If I didn't go into music anything, I knew that I would lose it. And I just didn't think that was what God was wanting for me. And so I first went into choir, which was so great, which is how we met the current worship leader here.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. And then I found the minor like shortly after, still during like registration before I started. And they had a little music camp the week before school started. And I just knew that was where I was supposed to be. I knew that was the right place and with the right community, with the right people.
It's a great way to worship God and do that through the music. And yeah, I think I remember seeing your music camp thing. It was all coming back to me at this point. So choirs, soloing, leader, what do you like the most? Where are you the most comfortable?
I loved choir. Choir was great. So my last year in college, I joined commercial band. So I did pop ensemble group.
Nice.
So it was the 80s to contemporary.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which was super fun. I really enjoyed that. And then the second semester, my final semester, I joined commercial music, which was performing with a band. We had 3 separate bands, and you were assigned a band, and you just got to perform. And I truly fell in love with that.
Right.
I had no idea, like, God could use me in that way either.
Sure.
I thought it was only worship, and I truly do love to worship, but I also didn't know that God could use me through commercial music either, like singing contemporary pop, R&B songs. Like, I didn't know that, and so I truly fell in love with that.
Awesome. So then you had an opportunity, and you have another one even coming up, which was, I don't know if you ever expected that opportunity, but it was a great one. I literally sat there in the Honda Center and watched you on stage, backing up someone who's pretty well known. Yes. Go ahead and tell us what that was like and who you were with there.
So December 2022, I went on tour with Phil Wickham. It was such an amazing experience. I truly had no idea that was even possible to do, that door would ever open for me in any way. And so I think we were on tour for 6 days with 4 concerts in 4 different cities.
Yeah.
So it wasn't all in California. 3 dates in California and 1 out of state in Vegas. So we were first in Sacramento, and then we went all the way to Vegas, which was 8 hours on a bus with a whole bunch of music students, which was fun. When some people were trying to sleep, some other people were trying to sing. It was a fun adventure.
Exactly. So of the different venues, I'm curious, which one was there a preference? One that was the best?
It was the Honda Center.
Really?
I live in Orange. I live in Anaheim. And I drove past the Honda Center like almost every day, like from when I was a kid, like to when I started driving by myself.
Yeah.
Most of the places I would go, I drove past the Honda Center or like saw signs for the Honda Center. And never in my life did I think I would be standing on the stage performing to thousands of people, worshiping truly, and with a big artist who I'd listened to for most of my life. And most of the worship music I have is written by him. Like, I never thought that was a possibility for me. And now on the 1st for the Harvest Crusade, I'll be going back.
To the same place.
To the same place, to the Honda Center, to perform with Phil Wickham. And honestly, that's always been a dream of mine.
Sure.
Like, to worship at the Harvest Crusade.
Oh, yeah. That's fantastic.
And I truly never thought it was possible. Like, honestly, before I even got this opportunity, I thought about it maybe a month before, like a month ago. And I was like, wow, what would it be like to perform at the Harvest Crusade? And now God has made that opportunity a reality, which is...
He answered your question.
Oh,
He's an answer. Isn't that true? Have you had that other times in life where something pops into your head like that? Obviously, it's a thought that comes from God, or it's there, and then suddenly that takes place?
Yes, it's a very interesting experience.
Uh-huh.
I don't even know what to call it. It kind of sometimes feels like deja vu.
Okay.
Which I know is not the right word because obviously God brought it into my head and brought it into my life.
Sure.
But that's kind of the feeling. Like, you've seen this happen before. Oh, what if I could do this? And then the door opens and now here I am with the opportunity to do it. And it's all about saying yes. That final senior year of college, I kind of made a decision where I was going to say yes to things. Like, the things that God put in my path, I was going to say yes to them.
Right.
Because I had spent COVID, of course, alone and not doing much and just kind of in my house, and then coming back into school with a lot of COVID anxiety.
Okay.
I kind of shied away from people and activities. And so that final year, I was going to say yes to things that God put in my life, and
Right.
He just blessed that.
So looking at it as, okay, He's put it here. It may seem scary. It may seem big, but He wouldn't give me the opportunity if He wasn't going to help me.
Exactly.
Right. So that's great. Now, some people, you said, what they call, you said deja vu. Some people from a non-Christian perspective, or even some Christians, would call this manifesting. Okay, I thought of this, and then it revealed itself.
Right.
But I like to look at it more from a biblical standpoint, that I think God places it in the heart to begin with, prepares you for it, and I like what you said. Then are you willing to take the step forward when He opens up the opportunity? So there you go. So you're going to be at the Harvest Crusade. And I can tell you from the time you were in there before, because I was in that audience, that place was sold out. I mean, literally, there were people from our seats, there were people that were coming like to the aisle, the railing, that were in the way. We couldn't see. We had to actually ask ushers, can you tell them to go sit down? Because, you couldn't see. There were people everywhere. The thing was, there was not an empty seat.
No.
Yeah. And I'm sure it will be the same. In fact, if there's anything to pray about for the Harvest Crusade coming up, is how they can fit people, because it is a much smaller venue than what they've normally used.
It is.
Due to God making it that way. It wasn't their choice. But, so when you work with a Christian artist, people are confused about that too. They have different thoughts in their mind. I used to think much differently about many Christian artists than I do now. I've come to see that just like there's pastors and there's different people that have their ministry, that for many of these Christian artists today, that is their ministry. That is the way that they are sharing the word and the truth and hope and all that. How much of that did you get to see?
I didn't get to see too much. We met Phil once. He popped his head in through the entire tour and just kind of introduced himself. But it was truly like talking to his team, the team that works with him day in, day out for the entire tour, his production team.
Yeah.
They had such great things to say about him.
Mm-hmm.
And they truly spoke of a man of God.
Yeah.
That it was not a performance, that tour, standing on that stage, that was worship. And he was facilitating worship in that entire community, that crowd.
Right.
So hearing from his team, the people who work with him every day, how he is truly a man of God, was very comforting. It made me it was very good to know that we were not putting on a performance. We were truly worshiping.
That is a difference, isn't it? So if you had those times in your life where, you've led worship, you've been involved in worship. I've done that for years myself. So I know that there were times, not so much recently, but times in the past where you can really just go through the motions.
Yeah.
You know, you could be like singing words and paying attention to something completely different at the same time going through there. So what's the difference for you when, I mean, there's a difference between singing and worship.
Yeah.
What would you think that difference is?
As you were saying, singing really is just, going through the motions. Most of the time you feel it, but it's a difference between worshiping and facilitating an encounter with God through music than just singing some words that don't really mean anything to you.
Right.
Yeah.
So that encounter obviously starts with the person who's actually singing and leading. If we're not doing that, then kind of probably be hard to pull anyone else in.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, really good. Really good. Let's see. What else did I want to ask you? I had a bunch of things here. Plans and goals. Well, you've kind of alluded to some of it. So you're in the hospital right now. Is that where you're going to be, or you're still working towards something else on that?
I'm still working towards my final goal, which is that social work position. Okay. I'm currently as a dispatcher in the hospital. And in the fall, in September, I'll be going back to CBU for my master's in social work.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're going to still work? You're going to balance them both? Or?
Yes, I'm going to still work.
Okay. Great. Well, that's close. You're going to be a little drive going back and forth then.
Oh, yeah.
Is it on campus then for the master's work? Is it like every day of the week or just?
No, it's 3 times a week from 6 to 9. 7 p.m.
Okay.
Yes.
I was going to say. Don't make me get up early.
Would be not fun for me.
Yeah. So are you a night person more than a...
Yes.
Yeah, that's how most people are, right? Definitely, especially these days. So you're going to get that master's degree. What is that, a 1 year or 2 year?
2 years.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're just going to be even smarter by the time.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah, hopefully. And then, so you're hoping to do it mostly through hospital. But of course, I mean, it ties into ministry. It ties into everything. There's a lot. In fact, this is not something I told you I was going to ask you ahead of time, but it's coming to my mind. One thing I've noticed over, I shouldn't date myself, but over 30 plus years of ministry right now, is the real rise of issues when it comes to mental health, which I think is often tied to spiritual health when that's not there. But even those who are spiritual and have that relationship still struggle in many cases. So where do you see that tying in as far as ministry beyond just even in the workplace? Obviously, you're ministering anywhere you are. But have you seen some of that tie in as well?
I absolutely have, especially because I've gone through a lot of mental health things with myself. Okay. And I've seen it in my family and my siblings. I've seen it kind of take a hold. And it's been the experience that God gave me. I truly believe like having that experience is only going to further my ability to help people going through the same thing. Right. Because I can meet them where they are. I know where they've been. I've been through the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. And it's obviously different for some people. My struggles are going to be different than other people's. But having that basis of, I know where your head's at. I know what you're going through, and you're going to make it through. Having that ability to say that because I've lived it.
Sure. So those trials, those tough times, which everybody has different ones. But I'm really glad that you shared that because we do see scripturally that those tough times make us stronger and more complete to be able to do what God wants us to do in our life. Even Jesus himself in Hebrews tells us we don't have a Savior who doesn't understand what we're going through because he experienced the rejection and the loneliness and all the different things just as we did, without sin, of course, but he still experienced them all. So yeah, it gives you that empathy and that, I guess you could say, would you say this is maybe a bad term to use in this instance, but a person doesn't really have a moral authority to stand on if they haven't been in a position themselves. You know what I'm saying? So, for example, if I'm going to help somebody with drug rehab, fortunately, that was a problem I didn't have. I can help them to a degree, but at the same time, I've never been in their shoes. Exactly, yeah. So you see some of that tie-in to have that point of understanding.
I do. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm starting an internship again in the fall with the senior community who are going through things that I've never had to experience. Right. But I know that God put me in that position for a reason, and that he's going to work through however he wants me to. And I don't know how that's going to look yet, but I know our experiences are different, but kind of God's going to be able to bridge them.
That sounds actually really intriguing. So the senior community, like in convalescent, or how are you talking?
So I'm starting an internship with the Orange County Healthcare Association. Okay. And they have a senior community that they serve. And they were kind of, when I was interviewing, they kind of said, this community goes through everything. Goes through addiction, depression, just loneliness, health issues.
Sure.
Most of which I have not personally had to experience. Right. So I feel like God put me in that position. In my last year of school, I took a gerontology, sociology of aging class. Yeah. And I had no idea what that was for. It was honestly just to graduate for me.
Get some units.
Exactly. But I now see why God had me take that class, because I was going to be working with that community and having that Christian background, Christian education on that community. I feel like I'll be able to serve in a way that some people might not be able to. Yeah.
And it's funny how God always knows. Has the whole thing set up, and then it's like, why are you surprised? I planned the whole thing out. I can totally see that. I know that one of the things older people really struggle with is they feel, that the world's kind of left them behind. And to have somebody younger who actually cares about them and gives them some value, is going to be huge. So that'll be great. So we'll start wrapping up here. Two more questions for you. Coming out of, now we would consider you a young adult, but youth and young adults, okay, that's your peer group there. And we're just talking right now about some of the challenges that they face. Honestly, I will tell you, I started off as a youth pastor. I don't know that it would be harder for me to be a youth pastor now. The problems are different. I look at it going, what? The whole thinking, everything is, because there's a lot of things that people are dealing with now in your age group that we didn't deal with back when I was, say, that age. They just didn't even exist. So what are some of the biggest challenges you're seeing? And how does having a relationship with Christ, maybe, and more than maybe, is kind of a game changer, where without, think about some of your experiences. Without a relationship with Christ, how would that have been different?
Right. There really is so much different. It's so different than it was even like 10 years ago.
Sure.
There's so many apps. There's so much pressure to live up to this ideal, whatever it is. Like body type, for instance.
Sure.
There's pressure, and that leads into bullying, and everybody goes through their own things. There's like a phrase that they say, the bullies have gone through like the worst things, which is why they're bullying. They're taking out their pain on other people.
Right.
And that just truly will change someone. Like I know that the friends I've had have not always been the best.
Yeah.
They've kind of torn me down. And if I did not have God to lean back up against, to know that he was there for me when other people left me, they belittled me, put me down every day.
Sure.
That he was never going to do that. He was never going to leave. And even when I didn't feel it, he was there. And so there's just so much that goes on, and just having that faith, being able to know at the end of the day, God is going to be there for you.
Yeah.
No matter what you're going through, if you sin against him, ask for forgiveness. He's going to forgive you. Mm-hmm. Like, no matter what. Like, having that relationship was such a big game changer for me in my life, because I see, like, as I look back on my life, there would have been many times where I would have gone down the wrong path.
Yeah.
Because of what someone said to me, or what I was feeling at that time, or just the devil trying to get at me. But knowing overall that God was going to forgive, and God was going to be there, and he always had my back. It was huge. It was, because even when I felt alone, I was never alone.
Exactly. What you're saying is so right. It's always been the case, even when I was a kid way back in the last century, that when people are teasing, it's mostly because then the attention is off of themselves during that moment. But contrast from back then to now, it was just you're being teased in class, or you're just being teased in school. Now it can go viral. It's like taken to the 100,000th degree in ways that in my childhood, we never would have imagined. So I look at that and go, wow, it's difficult. And I think that's why we're seeing so many people struggle the way that they are today. We're going to close with that. So this is going to be out there in cyberspace, out there on the internet, and it's going to be seen at various times over the next few years. Somebody's going to stumble upon it. It's going to be a young person out there, somebody struggling that you never even met. And they're going to be listening to this right now, who maybe feels kind of lost, struggling, just doesn't know what to do. Maybe doesn't even know they're going to make it through the day. So I'll let the Spirit of God lead you. Imagine them, and what does he want you to tell them?
You're not alone. God's going to bring people into your life who are there to help you, and who just truly have the best interest for you at heart, and who are going to get you plugged into the right people. Go searching for that. Go searching for God. However you want to do it, get into the Word. Go searching, because it's always great to question. It's always great to ask questions. And if you're confused, if you don't know who to trust, who to believe, go to God. Pray. Talk to him. And I know prayer it's such an easy thing to say, and people don't understand most of the time what that means.
Sure.
It's truly just having a conversation like me and you are having right now.
Right.
Like, I talk to God all the time throughout the day, just like, hey, God, what's up? Thank you so much. Like, thanking him for what he's done in my life, asking him what he wants to see in my life. And I just honestly say, don't put your identity in anything other than him. It's so easy to get swept up in the fads, the new fun, the interesting, the trending. But at the end of the day, your identity needs to be with God, because anything else than that will get torn down by the world, will get torn down by Satan. And God's never going to get torn down, because he is greater. He's greater than every sin, than every hard time. He's greater, and he will do greater things.
Amen. Thank you so much for sharing today, Joy. We really appreciate it. And let me just say this, that, you know, if you're out there and you've been touched by something that's been shared today, is there a way, maybe there's someone out there that wouldn't be comfortable contacting me, but maybe it really spoke to them. And is there a way to kind of reach out to you in some way? Like, how would they do that?
I have an email. It's Joy, JoyLayne, AOL.com. I know AOL is pretty old, but I still use it. I still check it every day. So, yeah, just send me an email.
Send her an email and she will get back to you, I'm sure. And of course, you can always contact us as well on the podcast. You can contact me at jgothier@gmail.com or on Facebook or Instagram as well. Hopefully this podcast has been a blessing to you. I'm sure that it's going to be a blessing to many, as have all the other episodes that are out there. Feel free to go back and watch them, and also subscribe if you have not subscribed yet to the podcast. This has been episode 79 of the Audacious Faith Podcast. May you be blessed, and we'll see you next time.